NSFW, how would you feel if, as a young adult, you became aware that your parents had been swinger/open marriage types throughout your whole life? Hope I don't bump into them at a party. OF, that would be weird. There's an old Reddit post, no idea if it's real, about someone who brought their girlfriend/boyfriend, can't remember which, round to meet parents, and it turns out both parents were swingers and had had sex with that person years ago. Real or not? That's a hilarious story. It's real. In our case, our adult son was living with us. He came home with a FWB that we have been with months before. We all just didn't say a word. Although, by that time he knew we were swingers, so it might not have been as awkward. I'd go get a DNA test, and hopefully they were swinging with rich people. I'm coming for the money. Finding opportunities. The Chinese use the same word for crisis as they do for operaffit. I would be disturbed if I found out my parents were swingers. I acknowledge it isn't my place to judge, but I would be deeply disturbed. Hell, I was kind of iced out when I found out Dolly Parton had an open marriage, and she's not a family member. I just think she's likable. Dolly Parton had an open marriage. Wait, what? You're telling me I have a chance? That would be hard, because my parents have never had sex. I was a miracle baby. Don't be gross. I know this is a joke, but I have a friend whose parents are genuinely virgins and have never had sex. They're super religious and had all their kids through IVF because they saw sex as a sin, even for procreation. I'm going to wager there is more to the story there you friend was not privy to. Some possibilities: 1. Cult. 2. Infertility issues that wished to mask. 3. Latent homosexuality they wished to mask. 4. Infidelity they wished to mask. Agreed. Or his friend was just lying to him. My parents? My super conservative straight-laced parents? It would be hilarious. Don't sleep on that. My parents and their friends are massive super Trump Republicans. Hell, both Bob Dole and Donald Trump's campaign managers had massive scandals when it was discovered they were cucks and swingers. I imagine Dole cold offered free samples of Viagra as one of the perks of working on his campaign. Fine. My parents were hippies in the 60s/70s. My mother is a lesbian and my dad was fine with it. They were friends, but agreed to have a kid and marry to raise me. This was not a thing my mom could do on her own. But they were not romantically tied to each other, just partners/parents. Did you all live in the same house? Did he have his own romantic life? Pretty cool if everyone was happy in that setup. Yup, we lived together. My parents never divorced or lived separately. It was a normal middle-class two-parent household until my dad passed away due to cancer when I was 16. My mother did not have a female partner until the mid-1990s. She was not of the generation that expressed or revealed their orientation to the world. My parents did not hide the nature of their relationship from friends and family. Simply, my parents didn't sleep with each other/get romantic. They hugged and kissed on the cheek. Kindly affection, if you will. My dad was with other women. Neither my mother nor I knew or met any woman my dad dated. He had no other children that we know of after marrying my mother. There was a big age gap between my parents. It was just a non-romantic relationship. My mom wanted a kid and my dad was very good to her/respectful to her situation at the time. I worked with a sound engineer who had this happen to him. He finished school and did some traveling for a couple of years. And when he got back he discovered that his parents were all about that lifestyle to the point where they had open door parties at home, and his father was a well-known leather maker in the scene. Whips by George apparently. The operations manager of the sound and lighting company we both worked for was a regular customer. Is this an ad? /s. Why? Do you need a leather G-string and a cat o' nine tails? Why? Yes. The thing that I'd be concerned about is the chance that my child had a friend and the friend's parents disagreed with the lifestyle and wouldn't let their child be friends with my child. Absolutely a real concern. My wife is also worried about her public reputation. She doesn't want to be known around the city. Now, we live in a very big city, so I doubt anyone would ever recognize her. But it's a possibility that it might affect her career someday if she is being interviewed by the local news. She's an activist for some political and social stuff, and some dude recognizes her from a meetup they had a few months ago. Without sending any personal judgment, if you're into the political/activist scene, I wouldn't get involved in this sort of thing unless you were very comfortable with it being out in the open, because that's exactly what will happen. My ex-wife grew up in a household where her parents were swingers and their various lovers would be around at breakfast. It really fucked her up. My mom did that with her lovers. She had a lot of different women over all the time. I can't tell you how many different lesbians I've had breakfast with. At first it wasn't that big of a deal, because I was just a kid. But I started to realize she was prioritizing her lovers over me, like I was never nighttime potty trained. Why? Because the only bathroom was next to her room, and it distracted her. Also, when I got older it really started to F me up. I was 17, and she brought some girl back that I went to school with. She had graduated a couple years earlier, but it really F'd me up. My parents were always very open about sex. They weren't swingers, but I've always been aware, well, since being a teenager, that my parents have a sex life and it's normal and natural, and we can all joke about sex in my family. Had they been swingers, they're the types to explain about it, so I don't think I'd have had an issue with it. Probably wouldn't go telling my mates, but really, as long as everyone knows and consents, where's the harm in the lifestyle? I think as long as you don't raise children to believe sex is bad and wrong and shameful, there's not really much of an issue. But don't do it with their mates' parents. That could be a nightmare. Same. Last year I was gossiping with my mother in a pool, and after a bunch of pina coladas, I subtly hinted that my wife and I are adventurous. We ain't open per se, but I guess we could be referred to as swingers. She then confided to me that she had a threesome with my dad and another woman. The view I had of them completely shifted, and I experienced a maelstrom of emotions including disgust, complicity and pride. Lol. Oh good. Trauma resurgence. I found out when I was like 13 years old. Pictures and videos saved on the family computer. Worst part was my friend was sitting right next to me and saw it too. What's even worse than that is we had a boat that we took out almost every weekend, and a lot of it happened on that and in the cabin of the boat that I regularly laid down/slept in. I, as one does, suppressed the S out of it and pretended I didn't know that anytime my parents said they were going to meet with some friends from out of town, that meant it was swinging time. Many years later my parents split and I decided it was time for my siblings to share in the horror. Don't snoop around. Kids, you'll regret it. I walked in on my parents back partying as a 16-year-old. I had suspected as a 14-year-old, but hadn't fully understood what that would mean until face to face with it. Kept my brothers in the dark until a big fight at 40, when my parents were trying to gaslight my wife and I needing to get right hurt with Jesus. Damn, they are hypocritical. My parents' marriage was happy till the day my dad died. They were married for 50 years. I don't care what they did to keep that happiness, I'm just glad they were in a happy marriage. Good for them. What's for dinner? Cream pie? And a spotted D. Damn. Haven't seen/heard that in a while. Lol. It's a rarity these days. While the lifestyle itself is okay with me, as long as it's consensual, my parents also would be the biggest hypocrites on the planet if they did something like that, due to their religious background. I wouldn't care. In fact, maybe they did. I don't know. It never occurred to me to analyze or critique my parents' sex lives. Why would any mature adult do that? Yeah, like, did they love me? Did they provide for me? Were they there and present? Why would I care if they swing? What's different then? That vs having two single not together parents. Hopefully the difference is they still love each other and are committed to one another and created a loving home for you to grow up in while swinging, versus two happy homes with lots of love and two places for you to grow up in while getting laid, but not with each other. When I was a kid my parents were swingers. It destroyed their marriage. I don't have the details, nor do I want specifics, but I can say that they definitely cheated on each other in addition to swinging. I think my father had gotten paternity tests during the divorce, but honestly there is no doubt my sister and I are his kids. We both look just like our parents. It's as obvious as day. Either way, I feel strongly about cheating to this day because of it. I also have a strong aversion to that lifestyle and people in it. I'm not morally opposed or anything. Just big yuck vibes to me. No thanks. Both my parents went full monogamous after their divorce. BTW. The swinging life apparently ran its course through them. I'd just keep in mind that there are a lot more people on Reddit that would be open to that than in real life. The average Redditer skews left and more liberal relationship wise. And OFC people who feel more strongly, typically in agreeance in this case, about this than someone who isn't, is more likely to reply. Good luck with whatever choice you make out of this situation. You'd be surprised actually. The larger subs have pretty negative reactions to anything ENM or poly related whenever it's brought up. Yeah, Reddit seems very adverse to ENM/poly on average. Uncomfortable and a bit disgusted. Same. I'd probably pack that away in the old bad thoughts bottle and just beat the S out of some poor innocent soul later. On a real note, there's no reason for your kids to have to know that S. Just do it and be discreet. I'd be very surprised because they are both conservative in a classical sense, not politically, but just more reserved and quiet, but I wouldn't care. That's fine if that were the case, but they both cheated instead, so as a kid of divorce, I'd rather kinky than absent, open bracket. TMI. Why are you telling me this? I don't care almost as much as I don't want to know. Better than finding out my parents were pedophiles who trafficked children. I'm so sorry. WTF. Thanks, friend. Impressed that they managed to hide it, and beyond surprised, because my mom is the archetype of mom. Very rarely did she act in a way that reminded us she was a whole person apart from being our mother. If I'd never noticed or known before, I'd be grateful they kept it private. I'm more thinking, if I'm finding out now, why or how, if they're being open and just telling me in case I hear anything. I tell them thank you, but nobody wants to hear about their parents having sex, so I appreciate the information and we never need to discuss it again. If they're thinking I'm old enough to not be surprised by it, and they're wanting to bring their dates and partners round, no, thank you. Give me time to process this and ask again in a few months. If they were always safe and happy and didn't upset each other, I can't really be too bothered. First, make sure my friends don't find out. F off on Liffin's bot. I wouldn't have been surprised. My parents partied a lot. I'd be very surprised considering they're some of the most unlikable people. This is the exact thought holding my wife and I back from fully engaging into that lifestyle. My wife and I are in that lifestyle, but we have a baby now, and she is saying she wants to stop cause she isn't sure how he'll react if he hears about it someday, when he's a teenager or young adult. Child of swinging parents here with a brother and a sister who only share a father, although born during my parents' marriage. Now that you have a kid, please stop. There hasn't been serious repercussion to the diverse gene pool, but there has been some resentment and backlash against our parents. I'm not worried about other kids. My wife and I are both fixed, so there is little to no risk of pregnancy. My parents divorced because one was cheating on the other, so if I found this out I'd have some questions, but I wouldn't want the answers to any of them.